My girlfriend of 5 years smiled before her girls' trip and said, "Try not to embarrass me while I'm gone." I didn't argue. After she left, I packed everything I owned, left my key on the counter with a 5-word note, and blocked her. She spent weeks telling everyone I was unstable and abandoned her until she cornered me at a wedding, and her best friend stepped forward and said, "We heard everything. My name is Mark. I'm 31. I work as a project manager for a mid-sized construction firm. Timelines, subcontractors, budget tracking, a lot of spreadsheets. Nothing that makes for great conversation at gallery openings. I've made peace with that. I like the clarity of it. A thing either gets done on schedule or it doesn't." Maya and I had been together for 5 years. She was 30, worked in marketing and brand consulting, and she was genuinely good at it. Sharp, funny, knew how to read a room in a way I've always found kind of remarkable. She could walk into any space and own it in about 30 seconds. I admired that about her. Honestly, I still do. Her world looked different from mine. She had a tight friend group: Sasha, Qley, Ben, and a few others who rotated in and out depending on the season. Art gallery openings, curated brunches at the right restaurants, weekend trips that were half planned around what photos they'd take. She moved through all of it without any visible effort. It was her natural environment. I was there too, or nearby, at least. Sasha was Maya's closest friend, the kind of person whose approval quietly organized everything around her. If Sasha liked something, it became likable. Qley was warm and tended to follow Maya's lead on most things. Ben mostly watched and said little. I liked all of them fine. I don't think they disliked me. I just always had the feeling I was a degree or two outside the center, tolerated, present, not quite included. I told myself that was normal. Couples can have different social frequencies. That was okay. We met at a food market, one of those outdoor weekend things with local vendors and hand-painted signs. Not Maya's usual scene at all. She'd ended up there because a friend canceled and she was in the neighborhood. We talked for almost 2 hours near a coffee stall. She told me more than once, early on, that she liked how different I was from the people she usually spent time with. I held on to that longer than I should have. We had genuinely good years together. There were easy evenings, trips that worked, months where everything felt right between us. This isn't a story about a relationship that was bad from the start. It's about a comment that, once I heard it, made a lot of other things start making sense. There were small things across the years. Moments where I felt present but not quite included. I kept telling myself they didn't mean anything. I was trying so hard to believe it. That weekend, Maya was packing for a girls' trip, 4 days with Sasha, Qley, and a couple of others, a wine region a few hours north, tastings, late dinners, the kind of trip she was good at planning and even better at enjoying. She'd been looking forward to it for weeks. I was in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her fold things into the canvas bag. She was on the phone with Sasha, going over logistics, which restaurant for the first night, transportation. She was animated, happy, completely in her element. The comment came between her discussing a dinner reservation and folding a pair of jeans. It just slid out easily, the way you say something you've said privately to yourself many times before. She covered the receiver, glanced at me, and smiled. "Try not to embarrass me while I'm gone. I told the girls you're..." And then the pause. "Well, you..." She saw something change in my face. She responded to it immediately. "Babe, relax." She went back to the call for a moment, then lowered the phone again. "They know I love you." She picked up the bag, kissed my cheek, and walked out. I stood in the doorway for a while after the door closed. "I want to tell you I said something." I didn't. I just stood there in the same spot she'd been standing a second before, and I let her go. Here's what I kept coming back to. She didn't say it like an insult. She said it the way you say something that's already been decided, a standing policy that everyone around her understands. She was giving Sasha a heads up she'd probably given before. The tone wasn't mean. It was efficient. She'd been saying, "Well, you about me," for a long time. That was just the first time I heard it said out loud. She wasn't trying to hurt me. I think she thought it would land as something almost affectionate, a charming disclaimer between two people who know each other. But what I heard was the sound of a summary, a settled verdict she'd never bothered to tell me about. The worst part wasn't what she said. It was how naturally it came out. She texted all weekend. Light, normal stuff. "Miss you babe, wine tasting is actually incredible. Sasha says hi." Warm and breezy, the way you text when your weekend is going well, and the thing you said at the door wasn't something you've thought about since. I read each one and didn't reply. I spent most of that weekend at the kitchen table. I made coffee Saturday morning and let it go cold. Made another one. Let that go cold too. I wasn't falling apart. I was thinking. I thought about a dinner at Sasha's apartment about 8 months ago. Every time I started a sentence, Maya found a way to redirect the conversation smoothly, not obviously, but every single time. I told myself she was excited and caught up. I thought about the gallery opening she said I didn't need to come to. She'd said it nicely, I'd probably find it boring. She didn't want me to feel obligated. I thanked her and stayed home. I told myself she was being considerate. I thought about Qley's birthday dinner. I was there. I remember the table, who sat where, the lighting. I saw the Instagram post the next morning, an amazing night with my favorite people. I scrolled through every photo. I was in the background of one frame. Not tagged. Not mentioned. I remember opening the app to comment. I typed something. Deleted it. I didn't say anything to Maya. I kept adding things up. Not to build a case. I wasn't thinking about any of that yet. I just kept remembering moments and realizing that, laid out in order, they formed a shape I recognized. Well, you wasn't a slip. It was a summary. She'd been managing how her friends thought about me for a long time. I was always pre-explained, already contextualized before I arrived, accounted for before I even walked in. And I'd been going along with it because I told myself it was just a difference in personality, that I was reading into things. The trips I wasn't invited to. The events where my absence was easier than my presence. The photos I wasn't in. The 5 years of trying so hard to fit into the edges of her world without taking up too much space. I'd called it compromise. I understood now that it was something else, a shape I'd been wearing without realizing someone else had cut it for me. By Sunday, I wasn't angry. I was just clear. I packed what was mine before she got back. My books. My records. The coffee equipment I'd brought when we moved in together. The photo of my parents from the hallway shelf. I took only what was clearly mine and left everything else where it was. It didn't take long. I hadn't brought that much of myself into that apartment in the first place. Before I left, I sat at the kitchen table one more time. I had a piece of paper from the notepad we kept on the counter for grocery lists, and I started writing. A paragraph. I looked at it, crossed it out, wrote more, crossed that out too. The page filled and emptied again a couple of times. At the end of all of it, 5 words were what was left. I read them once, put the pen down, left the note on the counter with my key next to it. I folded the sheets on my side of the bed before I left. I don't fully know why. I just did, then picked up my bag and closed the door. The note said, "No embarrassment. Problem solved." She got home Sunday evening to an empty apartment and 5 words on a grocery list notepad. She called my name. Silence. She read the note. She held it. She looked at my side of the closet. Then she picked up her phone. The text started at 8:47 p.m. "Where are you?" Then, "Mark, are you okay?" Then, "What is this note?" By 9:04. "You're being dramatic." By 9:11. "You can't just leave without talking to me." She called Sasha. Something like, "He just left, out of nowhere, left this weird note. I think something snapped." She told Ben the same. She told Qley. She was moving fast not to find me, but to get in front of the story. To tell it first. In Maya's version, I'd had some kind of episode. I'd always been a little sensitive about her friends. This was proof of that. She'd just been joking. Everyone knew she loved me, and I'd overreacted and disappeared, and now she was managing the fallout of my instability. She wasn't lying on purpose. I think she genuinely needed to believe the comment was nothing. Because if the comment was something, then what came after it was proportional. And she couldn't afford to let that story exist. Text 43. "What am I supposed to tell people, Mark? You made this so much bigger than it had to be." Not, "What did I do? What am I supposed to tell people?" I didn't open my phone for 3 days. I was staying with a friend, not explaining much, not being asked for much, which was exactly what I needed. I slept. I ate. I went for long walks at times that didn't make obvious sense. I wasn't processing in any dramatic way. I was just existing in a space that didn't require me to be any particular version of myself. On day 3, I picked up my phone. 47 messages. I sat down and scrolled through all of them slowly, once. The first 10 were confused and worried, which felt real. "Where are you? Are you safe? Please just let me know you're okay." The next 15 or so were hurt in a way that also felt real. Then something shifted. Around message 26. You've always been weird about my friends. Around 30, I don't know what you expected me to say, it was a joke. Around 35, this is so like you. She'd taken my reaction to something she'd said and converted it into evidence of a pre-existing problem. I wasn't responding to something that happened. I'd always been like this. She'd been managing it for years. Something had finally snapped. I kept reading. Text 43. What am I supposed to tell people, Mark? You made this so much bigger than it had to be. Text 44. I need you to respond. This isn't fair. Text 45. I love you. Please, just call me. Text 46. From a number I almost didn't recognize. I checked. It was Sasha. Hey. I was there when she said it. I heard the whole thing. I'm sorry. I should have said something in the moment. Sent at 11:43 p.m. on day 2. One message, nothing after it. I stared at that one for a long time. 11 words. No punctuation except the period at the end. Nothing asking me how I was doing, nothing explaining why she was reaching out, nothing trying to position herself in the story. Just, I was there. I heard it. I'm sorry. That was all. I've thought about that text a lot since. What it cost her to send it when Maya was her closest friend, and she had every social reason not to say anything at all. Here's the thing about 47 texts versus 5 words. The note wasn't my argument. The note was a mirror. It reflected back exactly what she'd said to me, your problem, solved in the same breezy, efficient tone she'd used at the door. And what her 47 texts told me, without her meaning to, was that she'd looked into that mirror and recognized herself in it. A joke doesn't generate 47 texts. A mirror does. And Sasha's single message, short, plain, sent late at night when she had time to think, told me something else. Maya had gone to her friends with the story first. She told them I disappeared for no reason. She'd built the case before anyone could ask questions. But Sasha had been in the room when the comment happened. She'd heard the whole thing, and she'd decided, quietly, on her own, that she wasn't going to pretend she hadn't. That mattered. Not because I needed vindication. I wasn't looking for witnesses. But because Maya's false narrative, he overreacted to nothing. Something snapped in him, now had a problem. The person she'd been managing my image for all these years, the person whose approval organized everything in that friend group, had already decided that nothing wasn't the right word for what she'd heard. I typed one reply to Maya. Not an explanation. Not a case. Just, no embarrassment. Problem solved. I sent it. Then I blocked her number. That week I took care of a few practical things. We had a resort trip booked. For the following month I canceled my portion, forwarded the confirmation to my own inbox, and let her deposit stand where it was. Her name was on the original booking, so her half stayed with the cancellation fee. I updated my emergency contact at work. I sent a short email to my landlord about some paperwork. Small things, real things. The kind of administrative tasks that make a decision feel concrete rather than emotional. I called a friend, someone I'd known for years before Maya, someone who knew me as just Mark, not as Maya's +1, not as the person she pre-explained to her friends. I said, I moved out. I'm good. He asked if I wanted to talk about it. I said, not right now. I meant it. Here's the thing I want to be honest about. I wasn't fine. I'd been with this person for 5 years. We'd built something together, or I'd believed we had. The clarity of what I'd understood that weekend didn't make it hurt less. It just made it simple. And simple isn't the same as painless. But I was honest. And honest felt different than fine. It was quieter. It had less static in it. I wasn't managing anything anymore. Not how I came across. Not how much space I took up. Not which version of myself was appropriate for which room she was standing in. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. I kept the books, the records, the coffee equipment, the photo of my parents. I got a plant, something low maintenance, supposedly hard to kill. I watered it on a schedule. It grew. 3 weeks later, Jamie and Amir got married. Jamie was my friend, a real one, someone I'd known for years before Maya, completely separate from her orbit. My invitation existed independent of the relationship. It didn't expire when the relationship did. I'd always known I was going. The venue was a gallery downtown. Exposed brick, clean lines, soft lighting, modern work on the walls. Exactly Maya's aesthetic. The kind of space she was made for. I knew she'd be there. She knew Amir through a mutual connection. I'd thought about it and decided it didn't change anything about whether I went. I arrived early, got a drink at the bar, and stayed there for a few minutes without scanning the room. I wasn't bracing for anything. I was just there in her world, in her kind of space, showing up as exactly myself with no one pre-warning anyone about what that meant. I spotted her before she spotted me, or maybe at the same moment. She was near the entrance with Sasha and Qley. She said something to them and started crossing the room toward me. She came in warm. Oh my God. Her hand on my arm. I've been so worried about you. I'm fine, I said, thanks. She leaned almost imperceptibly toward a quieter corner of the room, a small movement, but I knew what it was. She needed to move the conversation somewhere she could manage it, somewhere away from people who'd already heard things. I didn't move. Can we just talk for a second? She said, lower? Just us? We can talk here, I said. She held for a moment. Then the warmth shifted, just slightly, the way it always did when the softness wasn't working. You made me look insane. You couldn't even say goodbye like a normal person. I left a note, I said. From about 6 feet away, Ben, who had drifted over at some point, glass in hand, not announcing it, said quietly, we know about the note. Not loud. Not aimed at the room. Just, we know about it. Maya looked at Sasha. Sasha was looking back at her, not performing concern for me, not managing anyone's feelings, just looking. Qley was doing the same. Maya had walked across that room expecting to find people who had only her version of events and had accepted it. Instead, she found people who had already decided. And they hadn't decided in the direction she'd been pointing. The room didn't go quiet. No one else noticed. It was a small circle, a few feet of gallery floor. But in that circle, something shifted. You could see it in the way Sasha was holding her glass, in the way Qley wasn't filling the silence. Maya had spent 3 weeks building a story in which I was the one who'd had some kind of episode, who'd always been a little off about her friends, who'd finally snapped over nothing. And the people she'd built it for were looking at her with expressions that said they'd heard a different version. She tried one more time. It was a joke, she said. Her voice had gone a little smaller than she probably intended. You know I love you. It was such a small thing to walk out over. I looked at her. It was, I said. But it was clear. I turned and walked toward the front of the room where Jamie and Amir were greeting their guests. I shook Jamie's hand. He said something warm, and I said something back. I smiled at Amir. I didn't look behind me. Behind me, I heard Sasha say something to Maya, quiet, not something I could make out from where I was standing. I didn't need to hear it. The conversation was over. Everyone in that small circle knew it, including Maya. She had spent 3 weeks telling people I disappeared for no reason. I watched that reason become visible to the exact people she had been managing it for all along. The messages stopped, eventually. A few more came through the following week before I extended the block. By week 4, nothing. Sasha reached out about a month later. Not to mediate, just to get coffee, which we did. Somewhere during it, she told me that what Maya had said on that trip had been sitting with her, that she hadn't known how to bring it up in the moment and had regretted staying quiet. She wasn't saying it to make me feel vindicated. She was saying it because it was true, and she'd been carrying it around. I appreciated that. I told her so. Ben told a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd gotten Maya's version of events, that I hadn't left for no reason, that there had been something specific. He didn't elaborate beyond that. He didn't need to. The mutual acquaintance had already heard the story about how I'd had some kind of episode, about how I'd always been strange about her friends. They now had a different piece of information. What they did with both was their business. Qley, from what I heard later through people we both knew, had quietly stopped including Maya in a few shared plans. Not a dramatic falling out, just the slow rebalancing that happens when someone's behavior costs them something in a circle they care about. Nothing was announced. Things just shifted. Maya lost her deposit on the resort. Her name was on the original booking. I thought about her sometimes, in the months that followed. Not with anger that had mostly burned off somewhere between the kitchen table and the grocery list notepad. And not with the particular kind of longing that makes you want to go back. More the way you think about a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore. A self that spent years trying so hard to take up exactly the right amount of space in someone else's frame. Trying not to be too much of whatever she'd quietly decided I was. I didn't miss that version of myself. Someone asked me, a few months later, whether I wished I'd said something to Maya at the door instead of just letting her leave. Whether a conversation in the moment would have changed things. I thought about it honestly. I don't think it would have. The comment wasn't a mistake she made, it was something she revealed. And you can't have a conversation that unreveals something. You can only decide what you do with the information. The smaller apartment turned out to suit me better than I expected. It was mine in a way the other place never quite was. No pre-management, no versions. Just the books, the records, the coffee equipment, the photo of my parents, and a plant that turned out to be easier to keep alive than advertised. I used to try so hard not to embarrass her. Turns out, stopping fixed everything.